Soul Tribe family. So listen, I'm up here and I was watching Love and Marriage Huntsville. And I found this episode actually to be very interesting. It actually triggered something for me, which had to do with Marceau and Tisha, and specifically about this depression thing, the depression issue, how he stated how, over that last year, he had been really seriously depressed. And Tisha was obviously, she didn't know. She was surprised by that. And there's some key things that he said that to me that really kind of like raised a red flag. One, he said that that he don't care about happiness and that he's content. And I'm saying to myself, like, you got to care about happiness, because people who are content are people who are content with the things and where they're at in life. And that is your happiness. You're happy about that. So there's some deeper stuff as to why he's depressed. And the fact of the matter is, I honestly love the way that Tiffany and I think his name is Lewis, that couple, how he said that, what did he say? They were talking about how communication is key. So because of the fact that he ain't communicating with Tisha, that's a problem. So that's why Tisha is wanted to get into therapy, because honestly, they need it. They need therapy. They need counseling to figure out what is it that's causing you to feel that way, and what is it, what she needs. Honestly, I think that they don't know one another's love language. There is problems in their marriage, and he's trying to work himself to death through it. You cannot work through depression. You cannot. When you're unhappy in your marriage, you have to talk about it. And the fact of the matter that he stated that he doesn't tell his wife everything. Yeah, you don't have to tell your wife everything, but when it comes to your relationship, you need to talk to her. That's the only remedy to this. To have real open, clear, honest dialogue with whatever it is that you're going through. Communication is key in a relationship. He said, and according to him, this episode with that vow renewal and stuff, he said he took his marriage seriously. If you take your marriage so seriously, why are you not communicating with your wife? Why aren't you really sharing your truest desires with her as to how you need to be loved, what you need, and what the issue is? And I mean, some people feel like, you have to stay in a marriage where you're unhappy. And sometimes if that marriage ain't fulfilling you, or if whatever it is you're not getting, then maybe it's y'all fell apart. Maybe y'all grew apart. Just because you got 15 years together don't mean shit. It don't. Shoot, I was married for 18 and that marriage was toxic. I finally had left that damn marriage because I was like, I ain't doing this no more. Marceau is hiding something. What is it that you need, sir? What is it that be real. That's the only way you're going to remedy this, is through counseling and getting help and unpacking whatever it is. And I guarantee you, he probably still have issues from when he was young. He probably got some real issues, and he's trying to think that, money was going to solve it. To me, the most well-adjusted out of him and his brother Maurice is the one who seems to be, who's real balanced and resolved, because it seems like Maurice has went through some things and have, worked through them, which is why even now when I look at him and Kimmy, is very balanced, and she has a partner that's balanced. So But Marceau fights every tooth and nail because he is stuck in these old dominant patriotic behaviors where he wanted his wife to just be a stay-at-home mom while he's doing this, that, and other. He wanted control. Maurice has a Marceau, excuse me, has a problem with control. And that's a learned behavior too. I wonder how their parental household was growing up. I'm just so interested in knowing how they grew up and where this notion came from. What he need to understand is that that's not a loving marriage. You know, when your wife can't feel fulfilled, you're gonna have problems. You know, and it's obvious that Tisha went to school. She's educated. She wants to do things. She wanted to do things outside the household, and he was fighting her tooth and nail for that because he wanted to control her. He wanted to control the narrative. And for what? Don't you? My thing is, to me, as I look out on some of the best marriages that I have seen, they have been marriages where partners have worked together. But this depression thing is a serious thing, and he really needs to unpack that shit. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse. And to be honest, that will be the start of the demise of the relationship. Because when I look back years ago when I, was married to my ex-husband, and in our marriage, he had drug and alcohol issues. And I remember after I had moved back to, when I moved and we were separated for quite a few months, he was able to wiggle his way back, and he relapsed on alcohol and drugs. And I'll never forget, when I finally got to see him in a drug state, that was like a light bulb moment for me. Like, I'm done with this shit. But then what happened? I was talked into taking his ass back after he went into rehab and got out. When he went into, he went into detox and got out. His grandmother, my ex-husband's grandmother, talked me into staying with him, and even gave me $1,000. Ain't that something? Your happiness at the time. We going through money issues and stuff. I was like, no, I ain't want the money or nothing. But she convinced me, and I took his ass back. And I'll never forget, like, after a while, I fell into a depression where I would work at. I would go to work. Work was like my paradise. And then what happened I would come home, I would sleep. I would just sleep. Sleep. Literally come home, cook, and just sleep for hours. I was so unhappy. And I'll never forget, I went to a doctor because my ex-husband was like, why you always sleeping? Get up, get up. I'd be like, no, leave me alone. I'm tired. And I went to a doctor. I had an African doctor at the time. And I remember him saying, you need therapy. He said, I'm not putting you on no drugs. He was like, you need therapy. So I went to a counselor, and I started seeing a counselor for a little while. And I shared with them like some of the shit that I went through with my ex-husband, how he now was off of drugs. He was still quite a few months off drugs. So I was always in an anxious mode because why? I'm waiting for him to fuck up and get back on drugs. After that, after that bout, he was clean for quite a few years. But I always was like in the back of my mind after I started to let that shit go with the drug thing, because I used to always kind of say like, oh, when you gonna do that shit again? Because I was scared. So from there, what happened? Now I was able to let that go. I was like, okay, he has a consistent behavior. And then what happened? I ended up having weight loss surgery. And after weight loss surgery, I lost weight and feeling good, doing good for me. And all that shit. And then at some point in our relationship, I think that was I ain't even pay attention how the drug thing started creeping back in through prescription drugs. My oldest daughter was the one who peeped that, because he was always trying to get like cough syrup and shit with the codeine in it. And I'll never forget, she was like, "Ma, something weird with that. Why he always trying to get cough syrup? Why he always trying to get somebody to go to the doctor and say they sick and all that?" And it didn't even dawn on me. And so then, because, he had gained weight, he was on medication for supposedly bone spurs in his back and all that. No, that man ain't, now I think about it, your back was hurting because you gained a lot of weight. And his back was hurting because, it was because of that. So he was coping by using prescription drugs. And eventually what happened? He ended up drinking again. And then once that drinking hit, on drugs. He was on drugs. And with that came, infidelity and shit like that. And we were not happy in that marriage because, like I said, after a while, I despised him. I despised him. I wasn't attracted to him. Like a lot of my feelings towards him were just like, he repulsed me. And so, like I say, my anxiety actually was I always learned how to cope because I came from a parental household where my mother was a very dominant mother, like strict, very masculine energy. My mother to me, when she raised us, she was a bully. She bullied us. She didn't even just bully us. She bullied other people too and their kids. She was mean. She was mean-spirited. And I know my mother had issues growing up. And I often wonder, what was it in her life that caused her to be that way? And I probably will never know, because my mother probably will never share that shit with me. I always wanted to know her story. I know my mom had kids young. The first one was at 16. Her parents made her get married. So, but yeah, my anxiety I had anxiety from a kid because I was always had to live up to certain expectations. And, my mother had a lot of kids and, it was a mess. But yeah, that's where my anxiety came from. But in that marriage, I remember that was the first time I got depressed. It was like I was in a black hole, and it was hard to get out of that shit. And I finally was able to get out of it, because after a while, my doctor did put me on a little bit of medication, very low dose, put me into therapy, and that helped me. But in these last years, I ain't have depression. I had just anxiety of dealing with that man, and I had to learn how to release. And I went through therapy with a counselor, and then I learned ways to release, which, you find it through crying, through whatever, journaling, everything. You have to release that shit because it's pent up stuff. And I learned to forgive and to move forward in my life, and learn to speak up for myself. A lot of times, these old unpacked issues triggers us in a way to where we stuff that shit down, and we find coping mechanisms, whether it's alcohol, drugs, sex, food, all those things. And you have to learn to really let that shit go. Now, going back to this marital thing with Marceau and Tisha, Marceau is definitely unhappy, and he has to figure this shit out. And his wife is trying to figure it out, because it's obvious that she's not too happy either. I'm telling you, marriage is like, it's not hard. It's just you got to be able to learn how to communicate what you need. I said, I tell you one thing, the next relationship that I get into, I have to be able to express myself. And actually, I'm learning that I've, I have a male friend who I call him, he's my spiritual husband. And he's the first person I actually have been able to just be honest with and just talk to, actually, not even just, talk to openly, because I'm able to really just say how I feel. And he respects that. And the way he talks to me is something that, I'm grateful for. So I finally have found my voice and saying how I feel, what I'm not going to allow people to do to me. When there is an issue, I speak up immediately. I don't let stuff fester. I just, I'm very open and honest. And I'm just like, a lot of these relationships and marriages fail because there's a lot of folks walking around here still with trauma from childhood that they just don't never address. And it shows up in their marriage. And I can guarantee you, he has some unresolved issues from when he was a kid. And until he unpacked that shit, they're going to continue to have problems. And it's like he's fighting it. I don't understand that. My thing is this. One of the things about me is I don't like to be in a place of discord. I don't like to be, especially because I used to worry about every damn thing. There was nothing I didn't worry about. I can remember there was a period of time in my life where I do have a great memory, but I can remember like the shit that people do that bother me, and I don't speak on it. That shit will fester. And I don't do that anymore. If I don't like something, I'm going to speak on it. And that's just how it's going to be. Period. But yeah, communication is definitely a key. The number one key piece in a relationship or marriage. If you don't have that communication, trust, and honesty, and loyalty, that's a big problem. Big problem. So, yeah, I just wanted to share that with y'all about this depression thing. Depression and anxiety. That's, wow. So he's been hiding depression from his wife and trying to work through it. That's not a good thing. I pray that he gets some therapy. He goes back to that counselor that Tisha wanted to go to, and they figure out what is really going on with the both of them. Otherwise, if you don't, it's going to show up and more so, and y'all going to have more problems, and it's just going to create more drama. And why create more drama for yourself? Why not heal it and let that shit go? Because on the other side of healing is your continued happiness. Happiness is something that the fact that he said that happiness is not important, you must be crazy. Oh, happiness is what I always want to create for me. And everybody else at that table was like, you must be crazy. Happiness is secondary. No, happiness got to be on the front end. Because honestly, that happiness drives you and motivates you. It makes you want more of it. And that's what keeps all of that bullshit at bay. Because why? When you releasing that shit, you letting that shit go, what does it do? It creates contentment, happiness, bliss, and you keep working on that, and you keep and you will have more happy times than sad times. And that's just a fact. That's a fact. So I just wanted to share that with you guys today. Hey, comment below. Let me know if any of you guys are watching Love and Marriage Huntsville. And hey, how did you cope with, if you suffer from depression and anxiety or anything like that, how have you coped with those things? I'd really love to know. Hey, let's talk about it. Put it down in the comments, because I really want to know. There's so many people out here and who are in these unhappy marriages and just not honest with what you're dealing with. Honesty is key. Communication is key. All right, y'all. Y'all have a good day. I love you guys. You take care. Bye, y'all.